You found me beautiful once. Honey, you got real ugly. Army of Darkness, a cult classic comedy adventure film from the early 1990s. The film did very poorly at the box office, but over time has become a fan favorite, largely because of its over-the-top ridiculous style and its many quotable one-liners. This is one of my all-time favorite guilty pleasure movies, so I was excited to learn that there's a German dub available for it. Unfortunately, the cheesy one-liners are often difficult to translate, and the German voice actors fail to deliver the dialogue with the same kind of punch that the original actors provided. Let's take a look at a few of the translations from the German dub of this film. Alright, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick! Okay, normally on this channel I talk about translation failures, like a figure of speech that only works in one language, or a pun that doesn't translate very well, or how the translation team picked the wrong word or the wrong phrase. This one is a little bit different in that I don't think there's anything wrong with the translation here, really. Zauber means magic. You might hear the word Zauberei, which would mean sorcery in English. The Germans also have the word Magie, which is closer in spelling anyway to the English word magic. Stab just means stick or rod, and it turns out that Zauberstab is an actual word in German. It translates back to English as magic wand. Now in this film, the protagonist is a guy named Ash, and he's been thrown back in time a few hundred years to medieval times, where he has to find a way to get back to his own time. In this scene, he's been attacked by a mob of angry peasants, and he's trying to intimidate them with his technology from the future. Now, he can't refer to his weapon as a shotgun, or a rifle, or a firearm, or even a gun, because those words would mean nothing to people in the 1300s. So in the English version, he refers to it as a boomstick, which is a very plain way of stating it. Of course, boomstick is not an actual term in English, so the translation team thought about it and went with Zauberstab. It's a perfectly fine translation. My problem with this one, and I really wish I could play the source audio for you, is that the German voice actor who's playing Ash just completely fails to sell this line. The line itself isn't that great, it's the delivery of the line that really sells it. Bruce Campbell did a fantastic job with this character in the English version, but unfortunately, it just doesn't come across in the German dub. You have to really sell it. Das hier ist mein Zauberstab! If the Necronomicon fell into the hands of the Deadites, all mankind will be consumed by this evil. Now will thou quest for the book? Now, not to get all nitpicky or anything, but because this story is set in the 1300s, technically Ash shouldn't be able to communicate with these people in English at all, because they would all be speaking Middle English, which is so far removed from modern English that it would sound completely foreign. But for the purpose of, making a movie, the writers just decided to ignore that and everyone can just speak English. That's fine. But to remind the audience that this is happening in olden times, occasionally they'll have some of these characters speak in antiquated English to make it sound more medievally or Shakespearean. So instead of saying, "Now will you look for the book," the old man says, "Now will thou quest for the book." Quest is pretty old-fashioned in modern English, and will thou is extremely old-fashioned, but still understandable to speakers of modern English. It's a nice little touch that makes the setting seem more believable. Interestingly, the German language has had a similar transformation since olden times. In the 1300s, the language spoken in most German-speaking areas would have been Mittelhochdeutsch, or Mid-High German. This was the transitionary language in between the older Althochdeutsch, or Old High German, and the modern Hochdeutsch, or just standard modern German. Mittelhochdeutsch was also quite different from modern German, but for whatever reason the writers here didn't apply the same historical flourish by using antiquated language in this scene, or in any other scene in this film from what I could tell. Instead, the old man says, "Wirst du dich nun auf die Suche beginnen," which is perfectly normal modern German for, "Now will you begin with the search." "When thou misspoke the words, the army of the dead awoke." Now whoa right there, Spinach Chin. You said you could clean this mess up once you got that book. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the old man's line. In English, he refers to the army of the dead, but this is translated into German as die Armee der Finsternis, meaning the army of darkness, referring to the film's title. But note that there's two ways to say darkness in German depending on what you mean. In English, darkness can refer to a simple lack of light, like "it's dark in here, let's turn on the lights." But there's another usage of the word darkness which is more psychological or spiritual, like "there's a darkness about him," meaning "I think he's evil." In German, we have die Dunkelheit, which simply refers to an absence of light, but then there's also die Finsternis, which is rather poetic and which has more of the spiritual meaning. So, Army of Darkness could be translated as die Armee der Dunkelheit, but that sounds like an army that goes around turning the lights off everywhere. A much better translation is die Armee der Finsternis, meaning the evil army. But let's also look at Ash's reply. Now whoa right there, Spinach Chin. Spinach Chin, according to IMDb, is a reference to a very old Three Stooges movie because the director of this film was apparently a big Three Stooges fan and wanted to slip that line in here somewhere. In German, Ash calls the old man Du Weihnachtsmann. Weihnachten means Christmas, and their word for Santa Claus is der Weihnachtsmann. So in German, Ash is literally calling the old man Santa Claus because of his long white beard. I think the German line is actually funnier than the English here. But for whoa right there, the translation team went with Jetzt halt mal die Luft an, which literally means now hold the air. It turns out Luft in German can also be used to mean breath, I suppose similar to how in English you might say, I got the wind knocked out of me. There was no literal wind in me, I just mean that I couldn't catch my breath for a moment or two. In German, halt mal die Luft an means stop talking, like don't let any more air out of your mouth. I'm the bad Ash, and you're the good Ash. You're little goody two-shoes, little goody two-shoes. Ash has been cloned by the forces of evil, and now there's an evil Ash and a good Ash. Evil Ash taunts good Ash by calling him little goody two-shoes, which is a very old expression in English. There was a children's story written in the 1700s called Goody Two-Shoes, but the expression predates that book by at least a century, and the oldest known reference seems to be from the 1600s, although the exact origin of the expression seems a bit murky. Little Goody Two-Shoes refers to someone who always obeys all the rules and does the right thing and never gets into any trouble. Apparently, there's no good equivalent German expression for this, so the translation team simply went with der kleine gute Junge, which just means the good little boy. I guess it's close enough, but not quite as funny as dredging up a 500-year-old expression. Ramming speed! I just want to point out that the German translation for ramming speed is Rammgeschwindigkeit. I love this word, it's so very German. Die Geschwindigkeit is the speed or the velocity. You'll see this here and there. For example, the official translation of speed limit in German is Geschwindigkeitsbegrenzung, which is another lovely German word. Die Grenze is the boundary or the limit, and so Geschwindigkeitsbegrenzung, one word, literally is velocity limit. Having said that, even Germans don't seem to like unnecessarily long words, and so the speed limit on German roads is more commonly referred to as das Tempolimit. Tempo meaning speed, and limit, of course, having been imported from English. I know we're on a bit of a sidetrack here. I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate a great German word like Rammgeschwindigkeit. Give me some sugar, baby. Terrible. But the good kind of terrible. It's ultra cheesy lines like this that make this movie so much fun to watch. Bruce Campbell later remarked in an interview that this was the stupidest line that he's ever been asked to speak as an actor, but it really works in the comedy style of this film. So, what did the translation team come up with for this one? Schau mir in die Augen, Kleines. Really? Look me in the eyes? That's it? Seriously? That's your translation?